Good morning if you're out there. Good morning if you're out there. Oops, forgot to turn on my headphones. Good morning if you're out there. Trying to move my chat around a little bit here. I can get a little better view of things. Like for some reason I need to see myself, which I don't. Good morning, Kay. How are you this morning? Trying to see if does it sound okay. Before I turn my headphones on, I was hearing a roar, but I think it's because it's self-induced. Or am I dead? Oh, that's off. Now it's up since 4. That's not good. That sounds like a problem. I was up. I usually am up somewhere between 4 and 5, but I go back to bed. I've actually been sleeping longer lately than normal. Not sure why, but I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna argue about it. I think it's a good thing. As he yawns and acts like he hadn't had any sleep in days. Yesterday was a really off bad day for me. It was I slept till I got up at a regular time about 8ish. I fell back to sleep watching the news about 9. Well, I started watching the news at 9 and fell asleep and didn't wake up again till nearly noon, which was not how I used to live life. I think we're in for a hot, sunny but hot day today here in Eastern Tennessee. The split was covering the screen split there was covering part of the words. Okay, before I retired, well, let me back up a little bit. I didn't like to sleep late. I didn't like to take naps, but I used to come home. Of course, I worked long hours and was pretty tired, but I'd go to bed basically when I lived in Middle Tennessee, and the time was, things went off at 10, television shows, and then you could either watch a late show or watch the news and still be in bed, 11:30, 10:30, or 11 o'clock. Um, and I used to sleep, but even after we moved back up here, for the most part, I slept through the night and got up early, somewhere between 5 and 6 o'clock. I was usually up and ready to go. And the last few years, that changed. In the last few years of my work, I didn't sleep worth a, well, not very good. I'm trying to think of something to say it would be appropriate, but not worth a dang. I laid awake. I tossed and turned, or I'd do like you were saying. I'd go to sleep and wake up about 4 in the morning. And I'd sit there and just roll over. Oh, there's probably a chance of thunderstorms here this afternoon. I don't really recall it. We're in that time of year when I have sat here for 2 hours doing stuff and not yawned the first time. What is it about the computer? Yeah, me too, Kay. I've also reached that point in my life where I've got to get up and go to the bathroom every 2 to 3 hours at least. But I'm old and wore out, so what do I expect? I don't know if Mike, are you still in chat? I didn't really look. He was in here early this morning. Or maybe he was in here last night. Oh, I bet I misread that. I came by and said hi last night, looks like. Katie, you still get up and they don't have to give me any details, but you get up, you still going to work, or you retired? I don't know your age and have no idea. So, yeah, it happens. It's a real thing. I don't know if women have that same problem as they get older or not. Maybe somewhat, but men certainly. Oh, you know what? It would probably help if I picked my microphone up out of the floor, wouldn't it? That should be, if nothing else, louder. I would think clearer from sitting in my foot to sitting on my desk. Dang. Good morning, Cherie. Surfer Girl 326, welcome. Right now it's just Kay and I sitting here chatting about not being able to sleep at night and potty trips. I've known people like that, Kay. But well, I don't know if this you probably wouldn't work for you, but that's some people like that are work night shift and to kind of get around that, but might not work out in your behalf, and that may not even be possible anyway. But I used to work nights, and I don't know. Well, back then though, I didn't really have that. I didn't used to be such a night owl, and two things happened. One was my wife, because she used to want to stay up late and watch old movies and stuff, but not as late as we do now. And then I did work night shifts for a while, and that probably didn't help because I didn't get home till midnight or after, and then it wasn't too unusual for me to be sitting there at 2:00 in the morning watching something myself. But I guess it's three things, because then I lived by myself for a while when I went back to college in my mid to late 30s, and I would get my homework and stuff done, or work I needed to do for school, and then I'd turn the TV on and watch the replays of certain stuff, from the east to the west. It's usually, delayed 3 hours. And I could pick that up. And I used to love to watch Discovery Channel and History Channel and things like that when they were rerunning stuff. And I'd end up staying up late at night watching that. About to drown myself there, yawning while I'm drinking. Surfer Girl says, I can't stay too long. Oh, okay, take my lunch. Well, thank you, Cherie, for that. I thought you were working this morning, but I'm glad you came in to say hi. Well, if we're still here when you take your lunch, holler at us. I'd say we'll still be around, or at least we will be for a little bit. I actually thought well, who is that? Who is this car key person? Teddy, do you know anybody named Car Key? Sorry, Carol, but he says he can't be bothered. Hi, Carol. Good morning. Always a pleasure to have you in the chat. You know, I need to fix something. If I can. I won't be able to figure out how. How do I do this? Okay. Bear with me just a second. I'm trying to remember how to do something. Teddy Carkey said, Carol said hi to you. What in the world did Surfer Girl say she needed to retract herself? Can't imagine it being that out of hand. Well, Carol. What am I doing wrong? Oh, wait a minute. Maybe this is it. Nope. That's the block your time. Yeah. I can't remember how to do. I need a couple of monitors. Well, I mean, probably don't really, but it makes me feel like I'm big and important if I have a couple, you know. Hey, I got a wrench crew. Hey, I got monitors in my chat. How many you got? That kind of stuff. But I can't remember how to do it. Maybe this is how I do it. No, that's not how I do it. Well, I guess folks will just have to. Let's see, by yesterday, do you mean last night while we were watching the Monarchs drive home, Carol? Oh, you did? I saw that. I saw that, Sheree, but I didn't. It just kind of went by my head, and I thought, okay, she's talking to somebody else. I went to sleep about, I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure what time I left the chat. I know it was after midnight. I probably fell asleep 30, 40 minutes after that. I like to turn this history thing on my TV I have a smart TV in the bedroom, which I know you probably shouldn't have a TV in the bedroom, but I do because, for 8 months I laid there and didn't have anything else to do besides that and read. But anyway, I laid there and I watched this thing about history, and please don't judge me wrong, but there's a show about the guns and things that were used in World War I and how they were developed, how long they were, and all about the countries. I find it fascinating because it deals with stuff besides just guns. I mean, they're talking about how things get made and how contracts work back then and how people interacted. Anyway, I like it. And it sounds terrible, but if sometimes I fall asleep watching it because I really enjoy it, but it's pretty calm and pretty mild and, no bangy noises, nothing like that. And I tend to fall asleep. So I fell asleep within the hour after I turned it on. Hey, John. Good to see you, Surf Bum. I didn't see you come in. So what time did they actually get there last night, Carol? your time, their time. I can do the math. I'm assuming you're in Central Time, but you may not be. That line takes a big jog up there. No fish running this morning, John? I guess if I want to keep that hot, I should put it on the warmer. I'll wait just a few more minutes, and I wanted to talk about some stuff till the next rabbit runs through the room, and then I'll be off chasing something else. That's me. That or a squirrel. 3:45 Eastern time. Holy crap! So about 12:45 their time, or 0:45 if you want to do military time. I guess that's about what they were thinking. I said sometime after midnight, 12:30, so they weren't too far off. Good morning, Miss Tina Mack. Tina McNeil's here in the house. She's always watching, folks. Don't ever forget that. Tina's got a wrench. See, I did that. I must have known how to do it at one time. I'd help if I went to live chat too instead of whatever that other one is. There it is. Wait a minute. I found it. All right, hang on to your hats. Oh, good Lord, it took me all the way back to here. Oh, maybe I didn't figure it out. Oh. Hang on a minute. Am I still here? Good. I thought there for a minute I might have just turned myself plumb off. This isn't how I should be doing this, folks, and I do apologize. I let myself get caught up. This is the squirrel I'm chasing right now. Please bear with. Talk amongst yourselves or something. I don't understand this. Try this one more time. Car key? Carol? I know not why. I can't put you in there. Okay, I'm going to stop fooling with that. Oh, Tina, I just erased you too. Ah. If I don't save it. Maybe you still are. I'll see you in a minute. All right, I'm back. I'll chase that rabbit later. But I'm not on the air. I will figure it out. Okay, have I missed anybody? I guess everybody's here. or at least for now. There might be a few more people pop in. Oh, as they get woke up. You mean, I put. Is this better, Carol? I moved my microphone again. I don't know if I went cheap or went what, but I got a good microphone. But I've got a desk stand rather than an arm over, to bring my mic down closer. And I dropped it. I set it in the floor again because it blocks part of it. I've got two screens and it blocks part of one screen. I was trying to do something intricate. So I moved it so I could see better for a moment, and I forgot to put it back up. Early in the chat, it was down there in the floor too. I'm surprised you hear me at all, but I'm glad you told me. Hopefully that it's better now. So it looks like it is. Okay, I got a thumbs up from John, and Cherie says it's much better, and Karki says yes. So that must have been it. Sorry about that. I like this microphone. I mean, it picks up everything. If you guys hear the cats when they come in, sometimes I don't hear them. If now these are noise canceling, and I can turn. Ooh, I don't like that. I can turn the ambient sound on and off, so I can hear them better, and I can actually hear somebody come up. But my hearing is so bad to begin with that the headphones, they're Sony's, I believe. Let me look again. Yeah, they're Sony's. They were fairly expensive headphones, but I got them for a really good price. Amazon had a sale, or I may have had them as long as back in last Prime days or something. Maybe I got them over Christmas, but I bought Brenda a pair that were higher end than these, and I paid a lot of money for hers. Well, a lot of money to me. It was over $200, which I've never paid for a pair of headphones. I got these for way less than that. Oh, my microphone. I'm sorry. It's a Snowball and Blue Yeti, or maybe it's just Blue Microphone Company, but it's a Snowball. It's not the most expensive one in there that they sell, but I think it's a very good microphone. Okay, Kay. I found a place where it said something about it showed my moderators, but I couldn't seem to put, when I tried to put Carol's name at Karki in, it didn't take it. I'll have to work on that. So anyway, Blue Yeti sold Blue. Again, a lot of people know about Blue Yeti microphones because a lot of people do use them. But here's this, and I put this foamy cover on it to knock down on some of that noise, so I can get right up in here and talk like Tracy Glenn. And I put this stand on it, and it works really good. Well, I bought this one specifically because it has a setting on it where I can talk. It's picking up for the best reception. It's picking up all the sound from straight into it, and you can't see me what I'm doing. I'm holding my hand over it, but it has a switch where if I wanted to do a podcast with live guests, which I have thought about doing some with locals, I can flip the switch and it picks up from both sides better, so that I can just set it in the middle of a table and we can both, you can hear everybody. Sometimes when you have it on one side, somebody on that side, gets muted or muffled. Not muted, but muffled so you can't hear it. This one, Cherie, was, I think, a nice microphone, and it was under $100. I think I got it for like $68. I can check that real quick. Blue Snowball microphone. Ba-da-ba-da. Well, there's one for $39, but they make a couple different models of this one. And the omnidirectional one looks like it's down to 59 now. So it looks like it was 69 when I bought it, and that's what I thought it was. And they make some, of course, that are way more expensive than that. And I could put this one on an arm, but at the time, the arm was just as expensive as so I bought this stand with the bungee cords in it so it doesn't vibrate and all that for far less than what I would have paid if I'd bought the stand and everything. So I ended up getting into it for probably less than $100 as opposed to, spending many hundreds on it. I wanted to get something halfway decent. Okay, Kay, thank you. Cherie's got to go. Okay, Cherie, thank you for coming in. Have a good day. I hope things go well. So she was the one wanting to know about the microphone, so I guess I was maybe telling her, holding her up there a little bit, but she can go back and watch the replay and get it all. When I put the title up in today's chat, I said, let's talk about travel, but I don't want to just talk about maybe the usual travel. I don't want to just talk about going to Disney, which I love to do, and I know most everybody else in here loves to do. That's great to hear, Cherie. I hope they don't start hurting today. I hope you get through the day somewhat pain-free. That would be great. Speaking of that, I need to take some Tylenol. I wanted to talk a little bit about different kinds of travel and maybe what other people like to do. If you do go to Disney, how do you get there? Do you take trips in cars anymore? In the 50s and 60s and 70s, and maybe up till just recently, most people travel by car. A lot of people still do. Planes were a luxury, and quite honestly, still are for the most part. I mean, I love to fly. I love airplanes. I love to fly, and I'd love to travel that way. Oh, well, we'll talk about that, John. That's a long way from the surf. Let me finish this thought if I hadn't already lost it. But most people travel. People travel, of course, by train at one time, which I wish we could do in this country more. I think trains are a great way to travel and see country. Here's the one thing about, I guess there's two things that are important about a car. But if you're driving the car, you really can't see everything. And you miss stuff. So I know when I start to ride in the passenger side, which unfortunately due to my paralysis issues or nerve issues, I have been relegated to the right seat most of the time, co-pilot for about 8 months. But you see more. You can look around. You get to see things. In fact, my wife's saying, I hope you can drive soon, so I get to look around. But when if you travel on a train, it may not go everywhere you want to go, which is the advantage of being in a car. You can go where you want to, but you get to look out the windows. I mean, you can see what's going by. You don't have to be focused on the road and driving. And I love that. Sometimes I wish cars were on tracks. We could just let go of the wheel and set the cruise control to the approved speed. And everybody just run and nobody run into each other. And, that'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, Tina, that's not a good thing. We have a term for that in motorcycle. It's targeting. You do that on a motorcycle too. If you're riding down the road and suddenly there's something, a big rock in the road. If you sit there and look right at it, like for some reason you think maybe you need to keep an eye on it, you'll run right over the darn thing every time. You got to look away from it, not to hit it, because your motorcycle, at least, and the car is the same way, really, tends to go where you're looking. In the car's case, you can usually straddle the rock, but I've hit a couple of before I learned that lesson, I hit a big old rock one night going home from somewhere, and just about, I'm amazed I was able to stay upright, but I did. coffee will give those Tylenol a little extra kick. Well, KK, you say you'll never drive to Disney again. So how far, what kind of drive are you talking about? I know we've talked about area you live in, but I'm not sure. I know for me to drive to Disney is about 10 hours. And that's with 10 to 11. And that's with some stops. We drive it straight. We used to drive it straight through all the time. But unless I had to work, and when I got off, we'd try to get down deep into Georgia, at least to Macon, Georgia, or Tifton, and spend the short night and then get back on the road. And we'd usually be in Disney by noon at the latest, maybe 1 or 2 o'clock at the latest. But we can drive it straight through, and we have many times. Driving straight through from Disney is usually what we do because we don't want to leave. Unless we do leave, then we got to go. We need to get home. Francisco, let's see. Francisco. Tracy Glenn might be right. That is kind of fun to say. I mean, if you say, think about this. This is me, Tim. That really doesn't do anything for you, but Francisco. Now that's just so much better. Maybe I should change my name to something like Francisco. Anyway, so okay, you live in upstate. Well, shouldn't be much difference for me. Well, yeah, I do get that. Some people say they're afraid to fly because of, crashes and whatnot. But good God, driving. I mean, you got a point there because and I'm not saying I'm fault free, but you got to watch everything, or somebody will run over you for sure. You guys may disagree, you may agree. I don't know how you feel about motorcycles, but one thing riding motorcycles all my life it taught me, and that was to keep my eyes out for the other drivers. I've always used the phrase "my head's on a swivel," but it really is. You got to watch out for people coming out of their driveway or running a red light or turning in front of you. Turning in front of motorcycles is the cardinal sin of all car drivers. And because they always say, I didn't see you. Well, you didn't look. I'm sorry, but I mean, you're really not looking for stuff. You're not really paying attention. I guess you didn't see me, but that and getting hit from behind, that happens way more often than it should too. But I guess we blend into the back of the car in front of us. I don't know. But, but you do have to watch out. But riding a motorcycle taught me to keep my eyes on things. And it has made a difference in my life. I've been nearly run over in a car a couple of times, and just by looking around, suddenly see somebody heading my direction and be able to avoid them. Let's see here, sir. John said I drove for 30 hours nonstop. Let me see if I can put that up. To Wyoming. But I was 22. Yeah, I could do that too at 22. Had to be back on base for muster at 6 a.m. and just made. So you were, I think we've discussed what you did out there. Seems like you worked on missiles, ballistic missiles. But so the base was in Wyoming. So I have a good friend of mine that's is still in Wyoming. At least I hope he still is. I hadn't talked to him lately, but he's a wildlife manager out there in the western part of the state. But he used to be in more of the eastern quarter. That was a lot of his area and territory was in that area. And he took me over to the Nebraska state line one day, and we turned around in this spot, and he said, "You know what that is?" And I said, "No." He said, "That's a missile silo." And I went out. I had to get out and look. It's got a chain link fence around it, so we couldn't get into it, which was probably good. And I'm sure there were security cameras all around it and stuff. But I mean, it's just there's a concrete roof there with a dome in the middle, I guess, for when the missile comes out. But that was strange. Minuteman 3. Wow, Kay, it took you 13 hours to come home. Wow, I wouldn't. Yeah, that's rough. Tina said, "Let's see, Tina. I'm gonna put your comment up here now, so I can read it." Yeah, you do, Tina. And I'm telling you, but I think the motorcycles helped me with that. They taught me to keep my eyes out more and be more defensive because if you don't do that, uh, you're going to get run over. And motorcycles do crash and they do hurt. People do get hurt and all that, and it's our fault. But the numbers are in the 80s or 90% that are caused by, with cars. And sometimes that's motorcycles' fault too. But most of the time, it's people pulling over in front of you, pulling out in front of you, or merging on top of you in traffic. And a friend of mine's been hit that way. Somebody just decided to whip over in the other lane, and he was over there going past them, and they just ran right over him. Fortunately, it didn't hurt him. It didn't hurt his motorcycle too much. He was able to kind of bounce off and keep it upright for the most part. But I've had so many close calls. Okay, did I say probably good? 10 at night and Chattanooga by morning. I'm going to guess you mean daylight. Well, that's cutting it. I'm sure for you, that's probably cutting it in half. Wow. Well, you still have to drive. That's one thing I hated about going to Myrtle Beach. Um, Once you got off the interstate system to head over to Myrtle Beach, I mean, it has good and bad. There's good and bad things about this, but once we got to over there and got off the interstate to go to Myrtle Beach, it seems like it always took forever because it was all smaller highways and smaller roads. And of course, traffic can get terrible. Oh yeah, probably is a good idea. Well, sometimes maybe I speak a little too casually, but uh, you know, I thought about that a lot since I was out there years ago and back then. And I was standing there within, I don't know, 50 feet or so from a nuclear missile out in the absolutely out what most people at least would call out in the middle of nowhere. It was pretty flat country at that point. We're starting to get into Nebraska and it's flatter, but there were still some pop up mountains and things. But I thought about what that meant, and honestly, it felt really strange because I knew that right there below my feet was a device that could literally destroy the world if enough of them got launched anyway. And it was a profound moment. I had to think on that a little bit, what that meant, and hope that never had to be launched because I'm proud that we hopefully were heading that game, but I'm also saddened that we have to be there because nobody's ever going to win if we have to hit that button. I mean, it's just all over. Bring on the zombies. I understand, Tina. I've always heard that New York, for example, while driving, and you can tell if it's true, but I've always heard that the brake pedal was hooked directly to the horn, which in my opinion is kind of an exclamation point. So as soon as you hit the brakes, the horns blow. Is that true? That's just what people used to tell me. I've never driven in New York, so I don't know if that's, seems to be the case. I was, John, I was east of Cheyenne, maybe and east of Wheaton, Wyoming. And it seems like we weren't that far from a little town where the crossroads was right in town. I can't remember what that little burg was. I could look it up on a map and tell you real quick, but you may know, you may have been in on this. Maybe. Might have been Pine Bluff. Not positive. I'd have to look on the map. It was Chugwater. Yes, that might have been it for sure. He lived in Chugwater for a little while. I do know Chugwater. So let's just say we were getting over towards Nebraska from that area. I'm going to post something that Kay just said, but I'm going to ask you John a question first. My buddy Mark used to tell me that sometimes when he was over there patrolling or going to an area to work or to check out, I mean, he spent a lot of time traveling. Of course, in Wyoming, you can travel 400 or 500 miles a day and nobody really thinks much about it because you can't get anywhere if you don't. But he would get over in that area sometimes, and he said you'd go around you'd turn onto a road. I'm gonna say go around the curve, but most of the roads are straight. But anyway, you'd top a little rise or something, and there'd be a uniformed military person, Air Force, Army. I guess Air Force, wouldn't it? Or does the Army control those things? But anyway, they'd be standing there blocking the road, and you couldn't pass, or you couldn't go that way. He could turn around and try another way, which out there means a whole lot longer drive. But they would be possibly moving missiles. He said he's seen the trucks covered up, of course, and the escorts out there more than once. And what they told him was that they kind of play 3-card money, so to speak, with the missiles. They move them around so that the Russians or whoever didn't know exactly which silos were armed and which ones weren't. I guess that was a result of reducing the number we had. So rather than put them in the same one all the time, they moved some of them around so that you never really knew where they were. But they were real secretive about it. They could also just be moving nothing and it still looked the same. So is that something you might have done, John, with that sort of thing? I mean, be out on the roads moving missiles and changing silos and that sort of stuff, or was that not true? Okay, yeah, I'm no doubt there was a UH-1 somewhere around there. I just found that all fascinating. We were out. I was riding around in his truck. He was actually working, and I was riding around as a friend and interested person, and somebody who was. Let's see, was I in school then? I may have actually been back in college then, working on the same kinds of degrees. Oh, so you were sitting at the computers and stuff then. Tina, I wouldn't doubt what don't still have them. I didn't know you were born on an Air Force base. My wife was born in the Naval Hospital in near La Jolla, California, San Diego area. My father-in-law was Navy, was stationed on a subtender somewhere out of the naval base there in San Diego. So when she was born there at the Navy Hospital, and they used to talk about how cheap it was to be born if you were in the military. Her mom still had the bill from her birth. I think it was $17 or something. Targeting. Ooh, I won't ask anything else about that, John, because you probably still don't want to talk about it, or still can't. I suspect that missile people are much like the submarine service. They call it the silent service because they don't talk about what they do, even when they're not there. Most of them don't want to talk about their missions. They take that vow of secrecy, so to speak, and I guess for security wise, that's probably a good thing. Okay, I thought I missed something else. Yes, I did. I missed this. Kay said, that is why we did the drive to start with. My niece and her family of 5 couldn't afford flying. I told them on the next trip I would fly and they could pick me up at the airport. Probably not a bad idea. Okay, what was this other one I saw here? Tina said, at least it's an option with many car models. Well, I missed something. Oh, with the horn. Okay, I get that. Of course, you're not from the city, though, are you, Tina? I mean, did you ever live in New York City? Well, I tell you what we did when we were traveling and going to Disney and did a few other things, but we ended up buying a used conversion van, and it was already, and well, I mean, it was converted, so it already had like pilot or captain's chairs in it and that sort of thing. And later on, I put in some newer ones, and they work better and stuff for the girls to ride in. But we had two girls, and a small car was just harder to travel in for them. So when I bought the van, like I said, I used to do a lot of fabrication work and stuff. So I built a stand to put in it for small TV. This stuff wasn't as easy to get in the late 80s, but about a 12-volt TV and a 12-volt VCR that would run on a convert. Well, I'll take that back. I bought a converter. Converter that we took the DC power from the electrical system of the van and turned it into 120 volts AC, so I could run the TV and the disc player, or not disc player. We didn't have disc players. The VHS machine, VCR, and they could sit in the back and watch movies all the way to Florida or wherever we were going, or going back home. We used to drive home, which was from Nashville area to Upper East Tennessee all the time, probably at least once a month for family matters or to visit family or whatever. And it might not be the best way to do is have your kids focused on something like that, but we did. And they watched a lot of good family Disney movies, but they also, my older daughter loved to watch documentaries. So I had some documentaries on tape, like Ken Burns' Civil War, and she and I would watch. She would watch it. I would listen to it if I was driving, and if I wasn't driving, I'd get in the back with her, and we could watch the Civil War or something. So I've seen the Civil War probably 500 times, but and then later on, some friends of mine, my age or older, we went to New Mexico on a big trip and drove my van out there, and the more adulting type movies, Civil War stuff, or some documentaries, or just movies they liked, with more violence and whatnot in them, kept those guys busy in the back while we were driving. That actually was a big help too, because they're just, adults can be just as bad as kids. Wow, John, so you're born in France. That is interesting. Hey, Amy, any chance you received your magic mail, so to speak, yet? I'm hoping you get it today. It may still be too early, but where you're at. Oh, you're at Disneyland. You may not even know. Disney World, where you were. But you and Mar, I hope, are getting those. Mar in Memphis, I hope she gets hers today. She might get hers before you do, since she's in state, but the way things work these days, it may have to go to Egypt and back before it gets to Memphis. I don't know. So, John, tell me something. I don't know if this works this way over there, but does that automatically also give you a French citizenship, or do they do it that way in that part of the country or world? I don't think so, but audio books were good too, and we did do that a little bit, but the kids would watch a movie and fall asleep in the back or something, and it just helped pass the time. I mean, it made traveling so much easier to have something like that to just take your mind off the road sometime, and not the driver. The driver couldn't see the TV. I made sure of that, but but you could listen to things. I mean, it's kind of like audiobook to me. But we did that too sometimes. Audiobooks were great. And we did have CD players in there. Okay, I've got this weird. Let me show you. I don't know if you can see it or not. See that thumbnail? It focuses. See that dip in that thumbnail? Looks like a heart shape. My top of my thumbnail is heart shape. When I was still working on airplanes, we moved a piece of machinery into our shop. See, rabbit, squirrel. Into our shop, and I smashed my thumb again between a door jamb, which was steel and concrete, and a steel milling machine, which was several hundred pounds and, solid steel. And it, I got the usual smashed thumb syndrome and all the blood underneath. I had to drill a hole in it to get the pressure out and all that kind of stuff. And the middle part of that thumbnail just turned black. Not the whole thumbnail, but the middle part. So when it grew back out, and it did eventually, it has a weak spot in the middle, and you can kind of look at it and see that streak right in the middle. So as it grows, that part is fragile and breaks. I mean, it's just real easy. The rest of it doesn't. So I end up with these heart-shaped thumbnails that I have to cut off to make them look, kind of normal. And I just caught this one on something. And if I don't do that, they tend to break. And lately, I used to have nails that were like iron. My wife used to fuss about it all the time. Toenails and fingernails. Hers break and tear and have for many years. They're thin and fragile. Mine were always just hard and kind of brittle, but they were hard. They didn't break very easily. Oh, it hurt like, if pardon my expression, it hurt like bloody hell. That's what it hurt like. It was, whew, that's one of those that just about makes you black out. Well, that's very interesting, John. Did she come to the States later? I don't know if your father and mother are still around. Rest in peace if they're not, but that's I find that fascinating. And I missed my question. I dropped the French citizenship when I was 18. Okay. So you did have it, though. That's just, I find that interesting. That's another thing I just find interesting. So out of the people we have in here, at least 2 or 3 of you were born on military bases. That's interesting. So now I've jumped way off of travel there again. See, I told you I'd chase any squirrel or rabbit that ran through the house. So we've talked a little bit about that, but we like to travel that way. I mean, I still like to travel by car. Well, and I'll get to my favorite mode of transportation in a moment. But, I hope the kids that travel more than they have. I mean, I hope they're able to do that in their life. Brenda wants to travel. She wants to go see places she's never seen, which I get. I do too, but it's a little bit different for her. She has a different perspective on what she wants to go see. And I guess blames me because we don't go see stuff, but enough stuff. But we wanted to try to do that when we both retired. And of course, here I go and have a bone spur in my spinal column and end up with a spinal cord glitch and can't walk for a year. So it's really slowed us down, but we're still working on it. We would love to have a small motorhome, and I think we'd rather have that than a small tag along pull camper. But either one would probably work for us. One time we could have traveled easily in like a teardrop. We used to camp outside in tents all the time. Well, we've been to Disney and camped in tents several times. Oh, you were here about 14 months. Well, may she rest in peace, John. Sorry to hear that. That reminds me. That reminds me. I found out last night late that one of my best friends in high school passed away yesterday from lung cancer. I hadn't seen him in a while. We actually live in the same town, and we were keeping in touch. And then his mother passed away, and he kind of fell off the radar. I don't know if he was just struggling to deal with that or if other things were going on, but we just didn't see each other much for after that. So, and I haven't seen him in several years now, unfortunately. But I found out he passed away yesterday. I'm going to look today and see if there's a funeral, what kind of arrangements they've made. And I would like to go pay my respects. He and I grew up about, well, maybe a quarter of a mile apart. John, I lost my mother about 3 years ago to dementia or problems related with dementia or Alzheimer's. And my dad, almost a year ago this month or next month, he died within days of me injuring my back this time. And I had to practically be carried to go to his funeral. It was rough. Well, thank you, Carol. I am too. I like I said, we hadn't kept up much lately, and um, I think he had some problems. I was working. I found out that he had a scout troop, and he and I were in scouts together. And he and I were both Eagle Scouts, and he and I went to Philmont together. In fact, we shared a tent at Philmont for 2 weeks or a week, and each of us carrying half of a tent. Back then, we carried pup tents for oh my god heavy. But anyway, so at one time we were fairly close, and then we moved off to different parts of the country to work and get jobs and whatnot. He ended up in this area, and he worked at Oak Ridge, which Oak Ridge is where there's a lot of nuclear research came from. Part of the atomic bomb came from there, and was called the Secret City back in World War II because nobody knew it was there. It didn't exist on a map. It didn't have a name. That's kind of an interesting story in itself. But anyway, he worked over there for a long time as a machinist. So I don't know if he might have been exposed to things there that might have caused the cancer, or if I know at one time he smoked. I don't know if I'd say heavily, but he smoked, and he may have gone back to that. I really don't know, and maybe none of the above. I've always worried about cancer, lung cancer. Oh my gosh, Church Bum, you did it in 76? Well, I was there in 1972. Missed you by 4 years, buddy. So I'm guessing you're a little bit younger than me. A little bit, not too much. And I totally lost track of what I was saying. Traveling to Philmont, speaking of traveling, was a hell of an experience. Yeah, I'm 64, John. And I just said hell, didn't I? Sorry about that, folks. I always considered the trip to Philmont one of the milestones or markers of my life that made huge impact on me. The trip out there was somewhat eye-opening. I saw a lot of country I'd never seen. Went through a lot of places I'd never been. But I ended up at one of the most beautiful places that I'd ever seen. That was Philmont, New Mexico in general, I think, is a beautiful state. And in many, many ways, if I was going to move from here, that's one of the states I'd love to live in. Mexico has such a diversity of geographic changes and differences in climates, from high altitude to, desert floor. And the wildlife out there is probably not as much as actually back here, but it's so much different out there that it's huge. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I'd love to go back out there again. I have Brenda, my wife, has a aunt that lives in, I believe they're in Las Vegas, New Mexico now. If they're not there, they're in Tucumcari. But no, they moved to Las Cruces. I'm sorry, take that back. They're in Las Cruces, which is right down, not too far from the Texas and Mexican border, but another place I've spent some time, actually, several weeks in Las Cruces. Well, Tina, wouldn't that be interesting if you and John crossed paths at that age? That'd be fast. That's amazing. Just shows you how connected in some way or another people are today that you never would imagine. It's like that 6 degrees of separation idea. Turkey Lexter, Dean, sorry, buddy, I did not see you come in. And I'm sure that you're getting ready for work, and you are. Thanks for hopping in, Dean. So, John, tell me, what was your take on Philmont? What did you bring back from that? Anything, was it special to you, or just another camp out? Or because I learned a lot on that trip. I think I may have grown up a bit on that trip. I thought the country was fascinating. It wasn't easy all the time. We hiked and sweated and did all that kind of stuff, but it is a small world, Tina. But I learned a lot about teamwork and sharing a tent and doing that kind of stuff, which I've done before. I mean, it was pretty common in Scouts. Both of you haul parts of something and share the load and that sort of thing. But I don't know. It was just something about that area. And on one of the last days, maybe I guess it was the last day we were there. Oh, well, the last day we were in backcountry and coming into base camp, back to civilization, if you will. We got up really early because we wanted to make sure we got back in time to do some things before we had to get back on. We traveled out there by bus, and we had to get the bus to go back to Tennessee, East Tennessee, Upper East Tennessee, I call it. And but I remember we got up early and we topped this ridge. I don't remember the name of that particular ridge, but it was not far from what they call out there the Tooth of Time, which is a tall, singular peak that sort of stands up by itself there, and you can see it from base camp. But we were up on this ridge and we looked down into that valley or depression where the camp was, where the base camp is, the headquarters, and Tooth of Time, and any little patch of water that was down below us was just shiny and sparkly because the sun was just coming up in the east. And that image is stuck in my brain. I'll never forget that moment. I wrote about it a time or two in high school and college, and it just has stayed with me. And so it made that kind of impact on me. Oh, we did Mount Baldy too. I have my Philmont map around here somewhere. You and I could compare notes sometime and see if we went the same route, because we did something similar to that, and we did Mount Baldy. But we did Mount Baldy as a side trip. We didn't really have to carry our whole kit with us, because we went up and came back down to a camp where we were able to leave our gear, or most of our gear, so we didn't have to carry it all up. But Mount Baldy, for those of you who don't know, was the tallest mountain in that area of New Mexico. I don't know if it's the tallest mountain in New Mexico. I know it's over 12,000 feet, which was pretty amazing even though I grew up in the mountains. That was way different than the mountains I grew up in. It's twice the height of anything I'd ever been on in the east. And the air was so much thinner out there. It took us several days to get used to the air. I don't know where you lived at that time, John, but I was from Tennessee, and even though we lived at the foot of the mountains, or in the edge of the mountains, our altitude down in the valley was not that much higher than sea level, maybe 500 feet. But we got out there, base camp was 6,000 feet, which is enough to give you a headache if you're not used to it. And we hiked up above 10,000 and up to 12,000 pretty regularly while we were out there. So that was something we had to get used to. But it was still amazing country. I loved it. John, I'll have to look that up, see where, I don't know if I won't say this right, so apologize up front for mispronouncing it, but Coussay. I've been trying to learn more and more about cities and stuff in that area in France. I've been reading a book among other books I've read lately, but I've been reading a book about aviation pilots in World War One, and this particular book's written by a fighter pilot, and who flew a Sopwith Pup and then a Sopwith Camel. Sopwith Camels were what Snoopy flew. In case you don't remember, when he battled the Red Baron, everybody knows Snoopy. If you don't know Snoopy, I don't want to talk to you. Anyway, and it's very fascinating. I'm trying to learn the places he talks about being based and where he went, and it's all a true story and first-hand type stuff, and it's very interesting. He's written a couple of books. Those guys, those World War One pilots, didn't have parachutes. The fighters didn't, as a rule. They could have. I didn't know this, but he was talking about it, and he said they could have. Some of the observers and pilots of observation planes that were more or less the first things used during the war, or the balloon people who went up to, they'd go up and look out and see what was going on the other side of the no man's land in balloons, which got shot down fairly regularly. Those guys often wore parachutes, but the fighter pilot guys didn't wear them. It was all a macho thing, I guess. So if you got shot down, you either jumped to your death or you rode the plane down. But those airplanes were also made out of fabric and wood, and the paint, or as it's called, dope, that they put on the fabric, the cloth that covers the wings and the fuselage and the flying surfaces usually, that dope makes them stiff and hard. I mean, sometimes if you didn't know it was fabric, you'd think it was some kind of wood or metal, but that dope sets up and dries, and it's, kind of like a painted wall. But anyway, it's also, back then at least, it was highly flammable. So if for some reason you caught fire, those things burned up in just minutes. They were like a torch. So a lot of pilots jumped out rather than burned to death, and which is, a horrible thought. But they did. They could have worn a parachute, but they didn't. I mean, I know parachutes probably weren't very safe back then either, but I believe I'd rather have the chance. Maybe if it worked, you at least have a chance to fly again if that's what you wanted to do. I did too. I do too, Dean. And I really liked it when he was, World War One flying ace and was after the Red Baron. Those were cute and funny and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, we've talked about cars, and I've mentioned trains and motorcycles. Motorcycle travel is one of my favorite ways to get around. I've been riding motorcycles since I was 12 years, or not 12. Probably read some small things then, but since I was 14. I'll do that, John. I will do that in a moment. In fact, I'll take a minute to do that. But I've been riding motorcycles legally on the road since I was 14 years old. We could get a license in Tennessee back then for anything under so many 10 horsepower or something. So I gotta pay. I had to buy my own. I'm proud of that fact, or I am anyway. My dad said I don't think my mom probably didn't want me to have one. My dad probably didn't want me to have one. As I got older, they wanted me to have one even less for some reason. That was kind of strange. But I loved to ride. I feel like there are people who ride, and there are people who ride and they're just born to ride. I think it's either in your blood or it's not. A lot of people ride for a while and quit or get tired of it or something. But if you really love to ride a bike, it's like nothing in the world. I mean, it's just the best. But I used to get my paper route run on the weekends, because at least on Saturdays then, I was pretty much free after that. And if the weather was nice, I'd come by the house, drop my newspaper gear, my bag and whatnot that I carried papers in, and I take off and just ride backcountry roads for a while, run out a tank of gas or something and come home. So but I always wanted to go places. And when I graduated high school, the following spring, was going to be the Summer Olympics in Toronto, Canada, or Montreal. Was it Toronto? It was Toronto, I think. No, the Blue Jays played in a stadium that was left over from, I don't know. Maybe it was Toronto. Anyway, you can correct me if I'm wrong or whichever, but this was in 76. And I and a couple other friends were going to try to have upgraded motorcycles from the small ones we had to something we could travel on. I already had mine picked out, and in my mind had it geared up, and I probably could have had mine, and I screwed up. It was Montreal. So tell me something, Carol. I thought the Toronto Blue Jays. No, it was not the Toronto. It was the Montreal Expos that played in the Olympic Stadium. I don't think they exist now. I'm not sure if they're a different name. It was a different team. It was Montreal Expos. Thank you, ma'am. I knew there was something wrong with that statement. I just couldn't put it together. Anyway, we thought we would go to the Olympics and ride motorcycles up there and make that like, our first big trip after high school and that sort of thing. And probably it was about a year after we got out of high school when it actually happened. And by then we were all off doing something else. I was in school in Florida, or excuse me, I'm a little hurting this morning. I was in aircraft school in Florida, learned how to work on airplanes, and still I had a motorcycle. I rode back and forth to school, but I wasn't able to do that kind of a trip for the Olympics, which was kind of sad. But that was also a great year because for me that was an amazing year because it was 1976, and 1976 was the bicentennial of our country. It was the 200th birthday or the 200th anniversary of signing the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. And I ate that up because I'm a history buff, and that time period, not necessarily because of the revolution, but that time period in American history fascinated me. And I read about it all the time, and I've studied it and talked about it with people. And that was just, my mom used to tell me as I grew older, she used to say, you know what's wrong with you? You were born 200 years too late. And sometimes I think she's right. And sometimes I'm pretty sure she might not have been, but it was just a fact because she knew I read that kind of stuff constantly. That in the American history, probably up to the Civil War. And then some of my attitudes started changing about some of the things we did. And today I don't agree with a lot of things we did back then, but it was still part of American history that I enjoyed. It was a big deal. Oh yeah, the quarters were cool, which I'm sure somewhere I've got some. I actually have, and if you guys will pardon me just for 1 second, let me get something that I'll show, and hopefully it won't freak anybody out. I'm still here. I'm just moving over here to my safe. Okay, I'm back. I could have left it on, I suppose, but oh well, I'll fix that later. I obviously messed it up because you can see my open safe now. I turned it off, turned the camera off. I apologize. I want everybody to see me try to waddle my way over to the safe. I'm still pretty unsteady when I get up and walk. But anyway, bicentennial was cool. I remember that was the centennial of Johnson City, Tennessee, was somewhere in that period also. And my dad grew a beard. It's the only time in his life that I ever saw him wear a beard. And he was in a contest. They were having a beard growing contest in Johnson City. And so all these men were growing beards for this contest. So a lot of people in Johnson City had beards then. I'll never forget it because my dad had a pretty good beard, better beard than I've ever had. But even back then, his sides of his beard were jet black, but the chin stripe down through here was gray as mine is now. And I just thought, man, I thought it was great. I tried to get him to keep it, but he eventually shaved it off. But I just thought it was cool. Maybe it bothered him that it was gray because he wasn't really that gray then. His hair wasn't, but you never know about your facial hair. My hair is turning gray, but it's not nearly as gray as the hair on my face now. Reckon why that is. But anyway, I really loved that part of history. And what I would like to have done then was hopped on a bike and traveled all the important colonial cities like Philadelphia and Boston. And in fact, one of my favorite Disney movies is Johnny Tremaine. How many of you have ever heard of Johnny Tremaine? That's quite all right, Kay. You're still here. So that's, if you can hear us, then you're with us. Oh my goodness, it's a monarch. I bet that's Garrett. Garrett, what are you doing up here? I appreciate you being on, but you hadn't had a lot of sleep, have you, buddy? I heard that you guys no, it's not been that long. You got in at 12:45 or so. And so meant that would be about 3-something our time and 3:45. I guess you've had 7 or 8 hours sleep, maybe. You have what, Tina? I missed something there, I think. I need to back up. Maybe the quarters you're talking about. Well, I thought the car ride looked like it was going pretty well. At the time I was watching it, both kids were sound asleep. I think Dramamine did the job there. Quite honestly, I'd probably want to be asleep if I could do it. I was never that good at sleeping when we traveled. My brother used to, but my mom used to fuss at me about not sleeping. I didn't want to miss things. I guess I didn't take naps. I wasn't good as a child taking naps or anything. I'm much better at it today. I'm a much better older adult about naps than I used to be as a kid when I don't say when I really needed them, because I probably really need them now. Oh, you've heard of Johnny Tremaine. That's where I was at. That's one of my favorite Disney movies. Now, it's simple. And it was actually one of the Disney Wonderful World of Color or Wonderful Disneyland movies. It was a 2-part movie. And then later they released it as about an hour and a half full-length feature or whatever. But it had Sebastian Cabot. Some of you might know him as the guy who played... my mind. Played a butler. I can't think of his name. But anyway, most of the other characters in the movie were in some of the movies back then, but not too many. There were a few people in there. But anyway, that's just one of my favorite movies. It was just simple, maybe not 100% historically accurate, but you got the general idea. And that was the kind of movies I loved when I grew up watching Disney. Mr. French. What was the name of the show, though? Did it have something to do with the kids? It'll pop in my head sometime. Family Affair. Thank you, John. Mark one up for Surf Bum. Yeah, Mr. French was the person that Sebastian Cabot played, and their father was one of my favorite actors, Brian Keith. Is that right? Am I saying that correctly? Wasn't Keith Bryan? And I really I liked him. He was also in the original Parent Trap. I can't think of anything this morning. Oh, I did. You know what? I didn't think about that. Which one, Carol? Mr. French or Sebastian Cabot? In the movie Johnny Tremaine, or the show Johnny Tremaine, he kind of played a haughty, as in snobby, rich guy who turns out, poor Johnny was related to, but in the end, he didn't want to claim it, and the other guy didn't want him, and he didn't want to be his nephew anyway. But yeah, okay, yeah, he did. That's right. You're absolutely right. I was thinking you meant Brian Keith, and I was trying to think, did he? But you're right. So the original, this got started because before I went down the rabbit hole, we were talking about traveling to places, and I've always wanted to go to more of the historical cities in the country. And I've been asked before, why didn't I do that? And Brenda's even asked this a few times, although she loves to go to Disney too. Why don't we do that instead of going to Disney? Or why don't you go to France and see the real France instead of just the Disneyland or, Walt Disney World French Pavilion? And I can answer that. And I probably can't at the same time. For one thing, while it's not cheap to go to Disney, it's probably cheaper than going to France and spending a couple of weeks, but traveling, time you buy airline tickets and everything else to get there. But that's not the whole point. And my light is not right again today. Every once in a while it does this. I look more too yellow and too flashy. I need to get my makeup specialist down here. Bear with me just another second. That's worse. Well, it looked right, then it jumped again. Yeah, like that for an artistic shadow effect. I don't know. I'll just leave it alone. As long as you guys can see me okay. Yep, Brian Keith. I always kind of liked him as an actor. I don't know what kind of person he was. I don't know anything about him, but he was in several movies that I really enjoyed watching. Hi, Dave. Did I get it right? Welcome aboard. Is Sleeping Bear Dunes in the UP, Carol? Because I'll have to admit, I would like to go back to Mackinac City. I probably told you before, I told some others that we were going, me and four of my best buddies, again, we're going up to friends at that time. We're going to paddle the Boundary Waters canoe area. And we drove up through Michigan. We took that route and then the UP and then over across up into Minnesota. But partly because we wanted to go through the UP and see it. And just as we were getting ready to get on Mackinac Bridge, the transmission in our truck went out. So we fortunately were able to coast off the highway there before we got up on the bridge and had to get some kind of special tow and pay thousands of dollars to get our truck. Okay, John, I appreciate you being here. Thank you, buddy. And always a pleasure. And we'll have to talk more about Air Force stuff someday just for the heck of it. And Philmont, I'd love to do that if you have time. If you decide to get back on after a while, I may still be here. I'm not in a big rush to get off today. So I hope you and your dad have a great day or wherever he's at. So bye, John. So anyway, oh, wow. What was I saying? That's the bad thing about chasing squirrels and rabbits these days. I can't find my way back to where I was at. Mackinac Bridge. No kidding. Not later. We later kind of learned that if we'd been on the bridge when they'd broken it, would have cost us a ton of money to get towed and get around and all that kind of stuff. So we ended up spending a couple days in the Mackinac City area. We camped at a park, maybe over more toward Sheboygan. It wasn't that far from Mack City that I remember. I know it was right on the edge of the lake, which was cool. I remember that lake the water being cold but clear, crystal clear, at least by the shore of Lake Huron. And the bridge was pretty amazing to cross it. We went over to the UP a couple of times in a rental car while we were waiting on the truck to get repaired. And it put us just a little bit late getting to Minnesota, which is, I was afraid we might lose our reservation. You have to have a reservation to get into the Boundary Waters. Now, I've got so many hundreds of people in a year, thousands. And, Carkey says, we had our alternator go out on our van one year. We were just into North Carolina heading back from Florida. Learned the hard way that everything south in the south is clear. Yeah, that used to be the case. I don't know what year that was. It's not as big a deal as well, you know what? I'm going to take that back. Things aren't closed anymore like they used to be on Sundays. But to get your car repaired might be just the same problem. There's a lot of gas stations open, but not gas stations, filling stations with repair shops and stuff. And everybody didn't rip you off when you did that. Oh, he is, Carol. That's interesting. Can you say, without exposing something, who he's working for up there? Or what kind of work he's doing in that area? Or is he just, I don't know how old he is or anything, but I thought okay, Garrett, I liked it up there. I've been wanting to go back and take Brenda for a long time. Mackinac. I saw something on TV just the other day. It seems like it was on ABC Morning News where they had a wedding on Mackinac Island, and they were showing the island. And I saw some things I remembered being there. We took a ferry boat over from Mack City over to the island and kind of looked around one day. Again, kind of a fascinating place. We toured the fort, Michilimackinac, I believe that is, fort. And that was, of course, we ate that up because we were all history buffs on that trip. And at least three of us did reenactments with muzzleloaders and Revolutionary War period up to about the mid 1840s when what they used to call the fur trade era ended. And so anyway, we slept in a teepee and did that kind of cool stuff. And that's where I learned about teepee living and decided that my initials and my nickname should come along and fit that. And that's why my touch mark that I put on my knives was the letters TP inside of a teepee. Okay. Well, that may be fun and interesting. I'll have to admit I've never bartended, but I think in some ways that could be an interesting job. You probably hear a lot of stories, and good and bad, and get to talk to a lot of people. I think that could be fun. I'd probably get in trouble for talking too much. My daughter was doing, well, she wasn't really a bartender though. She was working in a restaurant. I know she had to take special classes when she was under 21 down here to work in a restaurant that served alcohol because want to make sure those underage kids were educated in what to and not to do. Dean, thank you for coming, and hope you have a good day at work. I hope you're not stuck in that hot drive-through all day. Well, that's good, Carol. I hope he does. Right now seems to be a good time for just about any kind of, they keep hollering that they're shorthanded. and they can't get the right people. I saw something the other day that was looking for people with degrees and things, and they were having trouble finding folks. Not sure yet what's going on there. It may be that people, I think a lot of people maybe change jobs if they could. I think a lot of people are liking working at home and are trying to stay that way. I've followed people online that have basically been able to take their work that they couldn't work in their businesses, have been able to take it away from the job and work from home, and now they travel and they work from their motorhomes or their campers or whatever, and they do that for a living. I have to admit, that's be tempting. I've done that both ways, and sometimes it worked for me and sometimes it didn't. But there's a lot of people that do nothing but work on a computer, and if that's all you really do, as long as you can focus on your job, then I don't know why you couldn't work from home, because computer works just as well there usually as it does somewhere else. Okay, Dean. Well, you make the best of it, buddy. I know you will. And we'll talk to you later today, I'm sure, somewhere. Yeah, Tina, I go back to what Tina said. I missed it. But yeah, repair shops and gas stations don't seem to even go together anymore. That's you're right. That's hard to find those. And of course, when you're traveling, you're always worried about getting ripped off by after they look at your license plate and see you're an out of towner. But I'd like to think that most of the time that's not the case. Now, you could be like the case of the boys in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And you could be in a store that's geographically a geographic anomaly, and you might not be able to get a part for 2 weeks, no matter what you need or where it's from. Yeah, Dean, maybe you'll have some good stories to bring back. So I don't know, has anybody else in here ever ridden a motorcycle or wanted to or traveled that way? I know there's a couple of people somewhere out there that I've talked to that have, but I also know there's a lot of people that don't like them or still refer to them as murder cycles or donor cycles. And I get where some of that came from. A lot, and sometimes that's hard to avoid that angle from people who don't ride. But it's a terrible thing to say. But I guess if I get killed riding mine, I'll go happy. I would much rather get killed on the back of my bike as die laying in my bed because I can't walk. That's driving me to try to get better, is get on my bike. How about trains? Has anybody in the room ever been able to travel by train cross country or take a long trip on a train other than just a commuter train to work or something? But my wife and her mother went to see my wife's grandmother, my mother-in-law's mother, in California one time. She lived in the Bellflower area of Los Angeles, or at least what's greater Los Angeles now. And oh, Carol, I'm sorry to hear that. You might have mentioned he had a Harley, I think, that you mentioned to me, or rode a Harley. Anyway, they managed to, and she had an uncle. My wife, again, I'm just going to talk about my wife because it's obviously her mother's brother. Had an uncle that lives up near San Francisco in Pacifica. So it's a Pacifico, and I think it's the name of a beer, but at Pacifica. So he offered to pick them up at the train station. So they got on a train in near Los Angeles, actually in kind of the suburb. I can't remember the name of that town. I want to say Nelson, and I know that's not right. It's not Riverside either. Anyway, they got on a train there, and it has a name. It's like the Coastline Special or something out in California. Can't remember exactly. And they rode up from there to Oakland, California, where they got off the train, and he picked them up and took them back to his house. But my wife just really loved that trip. They had a scenic car where they could get up in the top and look out. And of course, then they had their travel car. They had a coach seat, I think. And she really liked it. And she'd never really been on a train for any distance before. And she loved it. Now, part of the time they were inland on the east side of the coast mountains or the areas, so they couldn't see the water. But other times they were just off the coast and could see the ocean. So she thought that was great. And it took about the train trip up there it took longer than probably you could just jump in a car and drive it on I-5, but I think it'd be much more rewarding myself. I love trains. I wish train travel in this country was more convenient. I wish I could get on a train here locally somewhere and ride to Florida or to California. Even if it took a little longer, I would probably do it because I just think that would be such a relaxing way to travel. Tina McNeil said that she traveled from Vancouver, and that's cool right off the bat, to San Diego. Oh, just a couple of years ago. It was a 3-week plane strength and ship vacation. Oh, that sounds fun. Tina, how long did it take you to get from Vancouver to San Diego on the train? And since you did this as it sounds like a group trip thing, was it an express train, no stops, or did you guys stop in a few cities? Because I know when my wife went north on that train to the San Francisco, Oakland area, I think they made a couple of stops along the way. And I think one time they changed cars. She didn't change cars. They stayed in the car they were in. But that car got hooked to another train and they swapped some cars around. Or she may have been hooked to the same locomotives, but they took some other cars out. I don't remember. But travel from Los Angeles to Minnesota. That would be a fun trip. How did that go, Francisco? Did you go across the south and then up, or did you go up California and across the top? I know there's railroads that you can do certain parts of the country from, and some you can't. I know there's a big loop that goes around the country, and it drops down to cities, and even up. You can get Atlanta. You can get on Amtrak and ride to Florida, and you hook up with one of those other lines along the way, I think. And we've thought about doing that for years. It's just, have to go to Atlanta and store the car or park the car. And we just haven't done that. I'd like to. They also used to do a loop. You could get a ticket and some kind of a loop and go all the way around the perimeter of the United States on Amtrak and, end up where you started. I've always wanted to do that. I don't know if they still do it, but. Hey, Don, Hitchhiking Bones is in the house. I thought I heard something rattling. Rattling bones. But back to Francisco. I bet that would be an interesting trip too, because for one thing, you'd see a huge change in geographic areas from the coast, California, through the mountains and the Great Plains, and then finally to Minnesota. That'd be pretty cool. Tina McNeil says they also flew from New York to Anchorage with a layover in Seattle, then took a cruise from Anchorage to Vancouver, and then a train. Oh, well, that is cool. That would be an excellent trip. You also got me there. I've never wanted to do cruises except for one thing. I've always wanted to go to Alaska, and a cruise to Alaska, I think, would be one way to see parts of Alaska that I would love. And if I was lucky at all, I'd get to see some whales and that sort of thing, which would just absolutely make my day. And then maybe, do a little bit of, I don't know if it's how I know it's not how it always works, but I've known people that cruised up to Alaska and then got off for a day or two and traveled around in the interior and then came back and either got back on the ship and came down or something to that effect. And that would be fun. Yeah, I think an Alaskan cruise would be amazing. Alaska is another place I've always wanted to see 3 times. Excuse me. 3 times in my life, I thought I was going to move to Alaska. And I've always wanted to live there at least for a little while. I mean, I may or may not decide I wanted to stay there, but I've always wanted to go see it because it's just such a huge, magnificent place to me. And the first time I thought I might get to go, or at least had dreams of going, was when I was still in high school. I was not quite 18 yet. I was 17. I was working for a Goodyear tire dealer, and Goodyear went around to all their big shops or corporate shops or whatever, Goodyear dealers, and put up posters that said, or sent them out. Probably didn't physically go. They probably mailed them. But this poster appeared on the wall in the shop there that said, that they were looking for people willing to come to Alaska and work. And the pay was, at that time, far exceeded anything I thought I'd ever make there. I think it was $18,000 a year is what they were advertising, which, like I said, at that moment seemed like everything. And plus they paid your room and board. So it really wasn't going to cost you anything other than taxes to live there and to work. And you worked a couple of weeks on and a week off and a couple of weeks on and a week off, something like that. But they wanted people up there to work tires, to remove and replace tires on heavy equipment, trucks, all the vehicles that were working on the pipeline. That was when the Alaskan pipeline was being built. And Goodyear had a contract, I guess, with the builders to do the tires, maintain the tires and all that stuff. So they were looking for people to come up there willing to live and be in Alaska for at least 1 year. You had to stay for at least 1 year, or you had to be willing to sign to stay 1 year, I guess. And man, I wanted to go. I thought that would be perfect for me. But I wasn't 18 because that was the other restriction. You had to be at least 18 years old, and I wasn't. So by the time I was 18, that offer was gone, and I never got to do that. Then later on, I was working in Nashville, and we were taken over by a group of corporate investors, and we swapped hands a couple of times, and we ended up with this one guy who was a regional manager. I can't remember who owned us at that moment. I think Page Avjet maybe had bought us by then. So at least we were back in airplane people's hands for a while. Anyway, this guy was our manager, but he was also the manager for a shop we had out in Alaska. I believe it was in Anchorage. It was either Anchorage or down closer to the coast. But we had a small repair shop out there, so they didn't do a lot of heavy stuff. But I talked to him a couple of times about trying to go out there and work for a while, help fill in or get a job and work, stay with the same company, but get to go out there and work. And I thought for a little bit I might give a chance to do that, but it never worked out. And then one more time when I got laid off and went back to college, I met a guy in college that was about the same age as me. And of course, that meant we were all older than most of the students that were there. And one day near the end of the semester before summer, and I was going to work through summer. We sat down at a table to eat lunch, and he said, "Hey man, I just got a job for summer or for this year." And I said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And he was a pilot. He said, "I got a job flying a commuter plane from somewhere in Alaska up to Denali, going to work for a friend of his that owned a sightseeing / shuttle service. And he had the contract to fly people in and out of Denali Airport for, that were up there for different cruises or vacations that were going to spend some time at the Denali National Park." And I said, "Oh man, that sounds like a good deal." He said, "If you're looking for a job," he said, "I could probably get you a job turning wrenches," because we both talked about, working with the work we'd done before. So he knew I worked on aircraft and I knew he flew. And But that didn't happen either because I ended up we decided to move that summer and go ahead and change schools. I was in Middle Tennessee State University, still living near Nashville, and they had a program that would get me started in my degrees, but I couldn't finish there. So eventually I had to transfer from there up to the University of Tennessee if I wanted to finish getting my degree. But that's where I was going at that time, trying to stay in state. And so we decided it'd be just as well off for me to come here to Knoxville and go to the bigger university where I could just finish up and wouldn't have to worry about classes that wouldn't transfer and such as that. And I still had that problem when I got here. There were still classes that they wouldn't accept. So I had to work through that too. But, eventually it did work out. But that was the 3 times I almost got to go to Alaska. Jonathan, that would be, and I didn't see you come in, Jonathan. Good morning. Thanks for coming in to see us this morning. That would be amazing too, to take a train up through that part of the country, which I think is the way some of these folks that do a cruise are linked in with train rides or train trip. Denali just looks like the kind of place I would really enjoy. I've grown up here, lived this part of the world, and you'd think the heat wouldn't bother me much, but I hate the heat. I probably wouldn't like it being cold all the time either, but sometimes I think I can stand the heat better than the cold better than the heat. I heard somebody say, this might have been Kinsey Day said this week. She said, you just can't take off enough clothes when it's 100 degrees. She said she thought she'd rather be cool or cold because she could put on a jacket. And I agree. I can put on more clothes to stay warm, but I can't take off enough to get cool. I do too, Carol. I may not now. I mean, I may be past that chance, but I'm still keeping it on my bucket list. Who knows? We may get out there yet. 2 years ago, right after I retired, a friend of mine and another friend of his and mine, we're going to take a trip up into Canada, and I really wanted to do that on motorcycles. That was a motorcycle trip. And this was before I had my serious problem with my back and legs, but I was having some other problems at that moment, and I felt like I couldn't, I didn't want to hold them up or cause problems for them. So I ended up not going on that trip. So I'd still like to get to Canada. I've been trying to get to Canada for a few years too, since I was a senior in high school with the Olympic Games trip. But one day I'll get there. I'm still going to keep trying, even if it's passing through Alaska to get to Canada. Canada to get to Alaska. Yeah, I think maybe that's going to be the way if we ever get to go, I think that's the way we'll see Alaska, Donna. We've talked about that. My wife and I both have talked about that. I would love to see what glaciers are still left before they're gone. And I am worried about them being gone. Maybe in my lifetime, which is probably not that much longer. And I would love to get into the interior. I would love to see a wild grizzly bear. Once in my life, I've seen lots of black bears. I've never seen a wild grizzly. I'd like to see the salmon run. I bet the bears fishing, if you will, in the rivers. I would just like to get up there and see some stuff. I think that would be a great check mark on my list. Let's see here. Tina said we could have done the train. We were already on the train. All I ate on the train was deer meat, deer soup, deer sausage, and eggs. At breakfast, you name it, it was all deer. Do you know what, Jonathan? They probably don't tell you, but do you have any idea what kind of deer venison? Was it farm raised venison or wild killed venison? I don't know how they do it up there. Okay, I don't know all the circumstances, but I hope you get to. I've seen a couple of Tina McNeil said I've seen a couple of orcas, but mostly humpbacks and balines and minkies. That's interesting. Yeah, I saw a thing a few years ago. I don't know how this stands today, but whale hunting by and large affected the great blues and the humpbacks and other baleen whales mostly, and sperm whales, of course. And as those populations dwindled over the years, they said minke populations picked up, and a minke looks kind of like a little great blue, or they're that body style of a whale, but they're nowhere near as big. And at that time, there was some biological concern that increase in minkies might prevent the other whales, the great whales, from being able to come back, because the minkies are filling that void. And I don't know how that's worked out. Be interesting to see. Hopefully I know they are doing better. Most nations are no longer hunting whale, but some still are. Although great blues and things like that are supposed to be off the target list, but I don't know if you can believe that or not. That's cool, Jonathan. I'm sure that was fun. And just knowing they said it's the world's longest, that makes it special. I thought they were pretty small. I mean, they're orca size, aren't they? Maybe, and maybe not as chunky as orcas are. I mean, to me, orcas look kind of muscular. Did the world's longest zip line. Did the world's longest zip line at Icy Strait Point, 5,495. Wow, that is, my God, that's a mile. That's more than a mile, isn't it? Mile is 5,283 feet, I think. 1,000-foot drop. Wow, that would be pretty impressive, and probably a little scary. But I bet that was a real hoot, Jonathan. That's amazing that you could travel that distance and be that far above the ground when you went over the cliff. I'd probably like to bungee jump, or I would have when I was younger. I'm not sure I could do it today, and probably break my back. I'd probably be running for life, but I've thought about that. Of course, I always wanted to parachute too, so but I never got to do that either. Yeah, do that, Carol. You can come back and educate us some more. But I know they're smaller whales. They're a different class of whale, smaller than the great whales. And like I said, when the great whale populations go down, those populations tend to go up, because never forget this: nature abhors a vacuum. So nature will fill a vacuum. If one species leaves, nature will fill it with another one. May not be the one you want. That's one reason why we need to try to keep it balanced. There's Space Mountain Dave Contrell. Good morning, sir. I think it's still morning. Yes, we have 7 minutes before it's afternoon. And we're still sort of talking about travel, but we're chasing a few rabbits and squirrels up the tree if we get off on a different tangent. Oh, I know what I was going to show you earlier. I was talking about the bicentennial. You're not going to be able to see this, I don't think. Let me try to look and see. On top of this, I probably can't hold it steady enough to focus it. Kind of heavy. No, you're not going to be able to see it. Oh, well, no. I'll just read it. I shoot. I used to hunt, and I used to like to target shoot. And I would like to say I was collecting a few things. I'm not a very big gun collector. I'm not a very big collector of anything. I usually run out of money before I run out of desire. But in 1970, in the bicentennial year, 76, there were several gun companies that made, commemorative models and such as that for the bicentennial. And the Strum Ruger, which it was called back then, made several handguns and rifles that had the following on them. Made in the 200th year of American liberty. And that's printed on the top of this barrel. And only guns, pistols, or rifles, or whatever made in that year have that on them. So, it's a 1976 model something, which has made that little revolver there probably worth way more now than it was when I got it. And I had a rifle that had the same thing on it, so I had sort of a matching set. I wish I could say I had one of each of them just because, but those were called Liberty guns, and they were Liberty guns because of that print across the top, and they're only made in that year, so I think that's kind of cool. I've only got one left. I sold one of them back to the guy I got it from. He wanted it back, so I sold it back. I told him when I got it that if he ever really wanted it back bad enough, or I didn't need it or didn't want it anymore, I'd sell it to him before I sold it to somebody else. So we just kind of shared it for a little while, about what it amounted to. I gave him, he gave me what I gave him. So, but it was kind of cool to have. And I was just proud of the fact that they were from 1976. Man, this light is bugging me. Heck, that might be better right there. My beard's not quite as shiny. But, you know, there were so many things that went on that year that I'd love to have gone to Boston, Philadelphia, and seen the celebrations those years. So I'd love to have traveled up there. I'll never forget Walter Cronkite narrating the display of the great ships, the masted ships and sails that came into New York Harbor on July the 4th as that special celebration of tall ships. I think they refer to them now, the ones with multiple masts and large sails that are either reproductions of original sailing ships or still the real things that move, such as, not sure if they floated this and used it, but the old Ironsides, the Constitution, which is anchored, I think, in Boston. I have to look that up. Anyway, you can go see it and walk in it and, explore it. It's a bit of a museum, I guess you could call it, floating museum. I'm not sure if they sail that and that, but all those ships, and it went on for hours. Everything from clipper ships that sailed around the Horn of South America to the gold fields of California from New York and the East Coast to battle type frigates and things, military Navy ships there were just so many ships came in for that event, and it was just great. Let's see, Jonathan, I didn't mean to abandon you there. Straight down a mountain, but it's only scary initially when the weightless feeling goes away, and it's just a preview of the islands and water. But the scary part is the children swinging seat. You said, is the children swinging the seat? You said, and so you did this with more than not just you by yourself. Did you were actually riding in like a car may not be an appropriate word, but on a swing with multiple people, Jonathan? I'll have to look that up. Yeah, those are things about the bicentennial that I'll probably never forget. $2,500 feet's not bad, Carol. I mean, that's half a mile or almost. When did you do that, Carol? Was that in the last couple of years or a long time ago? Okay, so you're saying it's a small seat that you had to ride in, I think. That'd have to be a hoot, though. I've rappelled over the side of a cliff or a ledge. Now, I've never done it from 1,000 feet, but I've done it a couple times and when I was younger. And that was scary at first, but then once you get over that and figure out how to maneuver the rope and stuff, I loved that. I wanted to do that so bad. 5 years ago. Was that after the fire? The reason I'm asking is I know they put in a bunch of new zip lines and stuff. Well, you were in Sevierville, you said. This was in Gatlinburg. I know they put some new ones in Gatlinburg in that new area they've built that I can't remember the name of right now because we haven't been up there, but Disney has special parade. Yeah, they did. I actually was in Disney World in 1976, Kay, but I wasn't there for the 4th of July. But I was down there probably in April or May. I was still living in Florida at that time and was getting ready to move back home for the summer. Because I worked during the summer and helped pay for my schooling. And a couple of friends of mine came down, maybe to help us move, or maybe they just came down to visit before we moved back. And we went to Disney, and they were doing special concerts. They had other things going on. And I got to see Jose Feliciano live somewhere on a stage over in the Tomorrow World area, maybe where the stage is today, but it seemed like it was more out in the open back then. And of course, we were Jose Feliciano fans. This group of my inner circle of friends back then, we had the dark room together. We were all photographers, and we shot mostly black and white stuff. A lot of it just for fun, but we did do some work, if you will. I just gotten out of high school. I did that I started photography in high school. But anyway, but so we spent time in the dark room together, and sometimes late at night working, doing stuff for a job, or just hanging out on a weekend. And we played music. That was one of the first things it was a criteria for the dark room. It had to have music. So we had speakers in there and a turntable, usually outside, and when we built the new one, we had all that inside. But we'd play albums, and we did stack them up, which I know a true audiophile would never stack his vinyls, but we did. And we'd have to go turn them over once in a while. But yeah, remember that, guys? You had to go turn your records over to hear the rest of your music. But anyway, Jose Feliciano had a couple of albums out back then, and we played those all the time on the stereo. So when we got down to Florida, and lo and behold, there he was on stage. We found out he was going to be live for a show. We had to wait for that. So that was a memory I got from one of the bicentennial year visits to Disney World in '76. And it was great. We wanted to go. We all thought, man, we got to be here for the 4th of July. It's going to be amazing. And of course, it was pretty good then. I remember the parade, and I remember some fireworks. It wasn't what they were going to have on the 4th. And the 4th now is spectacular. And hopefully this year we'll get to see our new fireworks for the 4th of July for the first time in over a year. And that's going to be, that may bring tears to all our eyes. Even if we're not there, I'm sure somebody's going to be live streaming it. And fireworks for 4th of July and New Year's and stuff are so much bigger now than they were even back then. There were still just a couple of hotels back then. Carol, hey. Here, say hi to Carol. Say hi to Carol. You haven't been on all morning yet and said hi to anybody. Yes, they did. Okay. He's going back to bed. He was taking a nap when I woke him up. He's probably mad at me. It's kind of like, what are you doing? It's not my turn. That's interesting, Carol. I don't know where you would have went then for that. I don't know. Those things were kind of scattered around, that sort of stuff. He wasn't as sweet as he normally is. He was a little grumpy. I woke him up. He's, he's a professional sleeping cat. That's one of the things he does best. And as most cats are. And before I got on, he wanted to be cuddled and held for a little while. I told him he needed to wait till the show started, and he said, "Well, I'm going to be taking a nap then." So he got down. They did, Kay. They did have that. In fact, Rob Fuzz has shown that parade on one of his retro nights. And if you go on to Rob Fuzz, if you have ever, or if you go on to his retro show, a lot of times he takes requests, and you can request that. He has that parade on film or on digital now. And I've seen it a couple of times, and you're absolutely correct. There were performers in the parade that had the big heads and all that kind of stuff. And Mickey and Minnie had Star Spangled outfits. It was really a fun time if you were into U.S. history and the celebration that year. I always thought this might be the as far as that sort of thing goes, that might be the best year of my life because it was just all about the history period that I was most interested in. And I just ate it up. It was great. Well, this got something came up there about Disney World. Must be a streamer. So let's see. We've talked a little bit about ships, cars, trains. Anybody ever taken a long hiking trip or anything like that? When I was younger, I used to want to hike the Appalachian Trail from beginning to end, from Georgia to Maine, but I never got that done either. I've lived vicariously through others while they did it. But I always thought that would be something I'd like to do. I used to think that walking would be a fun way to get around because you could see a lot more. And I used to think I could just, take off and go somewhere. But I've walked to places. Well, we used to walk to the store and stuff all the time, a couple of miles. That wasn't a big deal. But I also learned that walking on highways and alongside highways is just not nearly as much fun as walking through the woods. Okay, now don't I'd like to hike through Scotland or Ireland, to be honest. But I'd love to walk through part of Scotland. I have some Scottish heritage, not much. My wife has a lot more than I do. I have mostly Irish. A lot of my background's Irish, and or ancestors, and so I would really like to walk through Ireland too. But Scotland would be really cool. I think that would be amazing. Hi, Dave. I've hiked in that area. Well, actually, I haven't hiked at Cumberland Falls. I've hiked at the Cumberland Gap area. There was a trail there at one time. It's called the Mishawaka Trail. And I don't think they call it that anymore. Probably something a little easier to pronounce. But that was a grueling trip for us when we were very young scouts and didn't know as much as we should have about taking that kind of trip. And not so hard later in years when we did a better job of it. But oh wow, Carol, so your grandparents were from Scotland directly? That's newer than me. Some of my grandparents, greats, came over in the late 1800s. That just after the potato famine area time when a lot of them came over. But so my generational split to Ireland I don't consider that very far back. A couple of greats, and I'm there, and I have enjoyed learning more about that. That would be fascinating, Carol. I believe that is. I think that would be great. I've tried to catch up on some of the history of that area in recent years more. I've always been interested, but I haven't kept up with it as much. And then the last few years, I've been able to at least watch more documentary type television about it. I watch more of that than I do regular shows and stuff. I'm always trying to learn a little bit of something. I'm reading a book right now about, and don't laugh, but I'm reading a book right now about the Templars, which can be controversial to a lot of people, I guess. But I'm reading about the Knights Templar and their connection to Scotland, and then how it may have brought some of them over to the Americas before Columbus ever got here, which I find fascinating also, and I believe could have happened. I mean, I'm not trying to start a conspiracy conversation, but I don't think there's anything keeping people like that away from the Americas. It just wasn't advertised as much. People didn't know about it, probably for a good reason, maybe. But anyway, I've just started that book, and it's taken me to already talking about places in Scotland I've got to look up and see where they are. And I always knew the Templars made it to the British Isles, for sure, because there's a couple of not monasteries really, but temples, cathedrals, churches that were built by the Templars, and then later, of course, when the Templars were supposedly annihilated, they were still there and they didn't get torn down. So, and in fact, one of them is real. The Rosslyn Chapel that was in the movie Da Vinci Code, if any of you saw that, is a real place, and it was really built by the Templars, and it was a place where they kept records and things. So, at least that part of the movie was pretty true. Yeah, we do, Kay, but there's still people that want to argue that point. And I think most people probably know better. There's a fascinating show on, I think, last year about Wisconsin and something called the Runestone. And again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist kind of guy, but this guy found this stone in the late 1800s on his farm in Wisconsin, and it appears that it might have been Viking or possibly Templar related. And of course, some people said he made it up himself and wrote it himself, which I don't believe he did. But he found it, and they've been trying to trace its origin and put some significance to it. And there are people who don't want to even find out because they don't want to have to change the history books. They literally don't want to even discuss it. They won't look at it. They won't authenticate it. They won't, research it whatsoever because they really don't want to change everything or make people think, Columbus wasn't the first one here. It's amazing that there's still restrictions on something like that. I mean, I personally would like to know. I realize we celebrate Columbus Day, which is, to me, somewhat controversial in its own way. I mean, Columbus got celebrated as the guy that discovered America, even though he never actually set foot here on this part of the world, a continent. But he didn't. Everything he did wasn't perfume and roses either. But that beside the point. I think the Vikings beat him here by a couple of centuries, and perhaps even other people from Europe beat him here. It's not impossible. Well, we know that people were here when he. Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of people. Yes, Jonathan, Rosalind is real. To catch up here. Sometimes I forget to read. Was it? I don't know about that, Tina. I know that the guy who made some of the first maps supposedly was named Amerigo Vespucci, and he took the named this continent America, or North America, and South America, I suppose, when he made some maps. And he, some people thought it should have been named Columbia after Columbus, which I'm glad it wasn't. I really am glad it wasn't. And so I'm not sure about that. I'll have to look that up and see if that's the case. It could be, because I do believe there were other people here that before Columbus ever got here. I mean, to just assume you're the first one doesn't necessarily mean it was. Back then, news didn't get everywhere, and some people didn't want people to know where they went. I mean, the Vikings were over here trading for furs and things that they really didn't want everybody else to have. They wanted to be able to trade them for a value when they got back to Europe. And if everybody else was coming over here and getting them, then the value would be down. So I'm sure they didn't tell all their secret places. But I don't know if any of you saw that story or not, but it is interesting. It's two guys that are trying to track it are pretty much amateur archaeologists, which is a detriment in some ways to them because they're not taken seriously sometimes. But one of the guys that's doing the show and probably footing a lot of the bill is an actor who's been in several movies, one of which was Fargo. This guy played if you've ever seen the movie Fargo, this is the guy that put people through the wood chipper. So he's that guy. But I love to hear him talk, and he has an interesting philosophy about life. Really, that's interesting, Carol. I don't know if it is in schools around here so much, but it was a federal holiday. So when I worked for the federal government, I got the day off. I'll be quite honest, I would rather have Juneteenth off than Columbus Day. I think it's more important. That's just my personal feeling. I think it'd probably take a long time for Juneteenth to become accepted, much like Martin Luther King Day did, but we'll see. Anyway, that show has got me looking at some new things and just making me think again and chasing a different kind of rabbit, if you will, just to see what kind of history I can find out about that whole area. And I hate to even say this part, but yeah, it's linked to that part's linked to the Oak Island story, which is supposedly got the money pit on it, and they've been looking for treasure for a couple hundred years now. But there's a group up there now that are finding some really fascinating things, and it could turn out that that's where the Templars actually did go. And I find that connection both plausible, possible, and interesting because, if there are records that show they sailed ships and went to a lot of places. If they brought their supposed treasure over here, which they were known to have, who knows? Maybe that is what's buried up there. Maybe it's hidden away somewhere. What did Tina say? I think the main thing that Columbus should be remembered for is he established that the world is round. Yes, I agree. And it was believed that it was flat up to that point. For that, we should I agree there. I think that did make a huge difference. And then, of course, Magellan came along and made absolutely sure by sailing around the world. And we hardly even talk about him. But yes, I agree with you there. I think that's something he did do because everybody thought he was going to sail out there and fall off the edge, which I find kind of funny. I joke about it sometimes about it being flat and falling off, but I am not a flat Earth guy. But there's still some people out there that aren't so positive, which I find absolutely ridiculous. But of course, some of those people don't believe we actually went to the moon either, and I happen to be a believer in that. Okay, Jonathan, thanks for coming by, buddy. I appreciate it. We probably won't be here that much longer. Oh my God, it's already after 12. I'm telling you, this time passes so fast when we're sitting here talking. That's true, Kay. They don't. Most people don't realize that the Japanese actually invaded mainland USA and probably even came onto the U.S. territory on land, probably along the West Coast. I mean, they came into Alaska and took over some islands and might have gone even farther if they'd been able to establish those as bases. But I think they also probably snuck in along the coastline and did a few things and observed a few things and who knows what else. But I do know that they came into Alaska, and you're right. Most people don't realize that. They think Pearl Harbor was the only thing that happened. Absolutely. I mean, they definitely were in Alaska, maybe earlier. And I'm not. I think Tina's also got a good point. I think there is DNA connection between the Western Native Americans and Asians because if you're a scientist and you believe in that sort of thing, I'm pretty sure they probably migrated this way. When the land bridge was closed from Asia to Alaska, the weather was different back then. It wasn't just a frigid ice field yet. It did turn cold later. And it's really difficult for us today, I think, and any people of any day to really think in geological time and continents moving around and changing places. And I mean, even today we're still moving. Most people don't realize that. we're not still, even though we don't have earthquakes everywhere, we're still not sitting still. Car Key says, I need to get things done. Thanks for a great stream. Thanks everybody for a great conversation. Carol, I hate you have to go, but I understand, and I'm going to just a few. I'm going to give it 10 more minutes, I think, and then sign off because I know people have things to do on Saturday. I'm just grateful you find folks show up and talk and want to discuss, anything that pops up here most of the time. And I'm grateful that most people that are here enjoy that, because I know we're not strictly a Disney site, although I'm happy and glad to talk Disney anytime. I know there's a lot of Disney streamers out there, and I know a lot of people, do talk about Disney, and I go into those chats and talk Disney too, and I love it. I do enjoy it a lot, but I'm not able to be there all the time, one, and there's a lot of really good people that are doing it that can, have that conversation with you. So I kind of enjoy being on here and being not an outsider. I'd like to feel like I am part of the community, but we talk about other things. So, and we can talk about more. I want to have more guests on. Chris, I think, will be back some when he gets to feeling better. I'm going to work on that too, but when he can. I don't want him here if he's not feeling well. Unless he wants to be. If he does, then we're going to work that out. But I wouldn't mind inviting other people. So anyone who ever wants to be on the show, please let me know, and I will talk about that and we'll work that out. I've been trying to get Carol Carkey to be on because I found out she's only been on once, and that was for the birthday for Chris, actually, that Tina did, I guess, where a bunch of people came on and, said happy birthday, and she came on there, and I found out that was her one and only time online live. So I've been trying to get her to come back ever since to prove that she did perfectly fine. She thinks she was horrible online, and I don't agree. I think she did just fine. So I'd love to get her back on and talk about teaching and what she's done in life and all that in Michigan. So, anybody ever wants to come on and share the time and talk, like I said, let me know. I've asked a few people, and not everybody, because I don't want to make anybody feel obligated. And I guess I don't know if I'm worthy of most of people's attention or time. So I don't want to get somebody on here that, really doesn't want to be here. But if you ever do, we've got space, and I'm always willing to talk about it. So like I said on my opening, if you ever read it, there's no strangers here. And I'm here to drink coffee and have good conversation. So that's what we manage to do usually. Well, Tina, I appreciate that. And I don't want to ever leave the community. I'm not planning on leaving the community. I'm just not always sure I fit in quite as well as I'd like to. I actually have a lot of Disney experience, spent a lot of time at Disney. I haven't been in a few years due to health and work reasons, but, we've been 30, 40, 50 times probably altogether, spent several weeks at a time down there. I mean, I used to think I knew a lot about Disney World. It's changed so much since I've been there. I don't know if that's true anymore. So there's a lot of new stuff for me to go see and explore, but I'm the guy that every year bought a new Burnham's travel guide to Disney World to see what was new and different and plan our trips accordingly. And we used to go at least 2 times a year and mostly drive down. Sometimes we flew down for short visits. Shortest visit I ever made to Walt Disney World was I had to go down to, there was a conference there, a wildlife conference, an international, well, it wasn't international, but it was a national event, and there were some international people there. And I was trying to drum up interest in a project I was thinking about doing from a master's degree, dealing with aviation and wildlife, particularly birds, because everybody knows that birds and airplanes don't usually mix. So I was actually trying to, get some interest in it. So I went to Florida to give a talk about it. I actually got there about 5 minutes late, and my professor had already, he got it for me because the airplane, I had trouble getting, the flight was delayed and I didn't get there quite on time. So after that was all said and done, I think we had lunch and we all went out and, talked about it a little bit more, and shook hands and things with some people at the conference. But I had to catch a plane back in a few hours. So I spent the rest of my day kind of wandering around Disney. I went to the Contemporary, went upstairs in the lounge and had a cold adult beverage while I was waiting on the time to go back for the plane, and just sat there and looked out the windows in the upstairs lounge and the California Grill area, and just soaked it all in for a couple of hours, and it was just great. I loved that. Then I had to hustle back to the airport and get on a plane, head back to Tennessee. But that was the shortest trip I ever made. But I haven't been frequent. I haven't been lately, and that's, like I said, lots of change. There's a lot of people there, so I haven't just pushed to be just a Disney streamer. But I do like to talk about it. I do love going. It is still probably my favorite place on earth. That's at least developed by humans, and so that's always open for discussion. Let's see here. Thank you, Francisco. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. It really does. I'm sincere when I say that, guys. I don't just say that to make you like me because, I think you said something good to me. I do appreciate it deep down. I still feel like I'm very new at this, but I learned to speak publicly and do things like that a long time ago. And I actually kind of learned that I enjoyed it to a degree. I led meetings and classes and some things when I was working with TVA, and did a lot of work with the community around the lakes and things that were civilians, if you will. That's not totally right, but I worked for the federal government, so I guess in some ways they were still civilians to us. They were users, owners, property owners, lake users, people who camp, people who like to hike on our property, things like that. So I always enjoyed doing that kind of stuff. I love to work with kids. I've got some pictures I need to post of us doing projects where young kids were involved, and had a great time with those guys. Did a lot of work with volunteer groups picking up trash. It may not sound very romantic or exciting, but we did good work for several years. We picked up many tons of trash off our reservoirs, and I worked with those people quite a bit and really enjoyed that. I worked with college kids, sometimes doing projects, and high schoolers and retirees like myself now. So it was a mixed bag of folk, and really, really love spending time on the water. I always thought I'd get a job if I ever retired and went to Florida, I'd try to get a job as a boat driver at Disney, because I actually learned some things from those guys. Some of those guys have been running those boats for years, the taxi boats and stuff. And the way they park and maneuver those boats around was fascinating. And I actually learned and used some of those techniques when I was working for the government. So they work. Let's see here. Tina said something important. Community's like a puzzle. Lots of different pieces, but all together we make a beautiful picture. A major portion of the picture is of Cinderella Castle, but it's also got bears and cats. Thank you, Tina. That is beautiful, and I appreciate that. And you're right. It is Cinderella Castle, but there's also bears and cats and tigers and dogs, and I believe motorcycles and other trips and travel, and crafty people who make ears and other beautiful hand art, and it's an amazing community. I think I've been very surprised in many cases and overwhelmed by the generosity of this community, and by and large. And when you look at what this community has come together and done for people like Pete McDivitt or other people who were having problems, myself, people have come to support me morally, or I mean, not here, but you know what I'm saying, have helped try to, bring me up out of the depths when I'm not feeling that productive, or, like the world doesn't give a crap. But, that's the problem with living in pain. Sometimes you think you're the only one, and you don't know if you'll be accepted by people. And at work, I think I was feeling that way a lot at work. I didn't feel like people understood just what I was going through sometimes the last couple of years. So that was one of the reasons I went ahead and retired a little bit early, because I was having a lot of trouble with my job, but I was also struggling to get my boss to kind of understand what I was trying to do or go through. But anyway, that's water under the bridge at this point. But this community I feel like it's taken me in by and large. And while I may not be considered a Disney streamer, I may never make Pete McDevitt's list of streamers, I still feel like I have a place here, and you guys make me feel welcome. So I'm going to keep doing it. We'll see how it goes. Maybe someday I'll get a big crowd, but for right now, I'm just happy with what I got. Yes, Tina McNeil, I agree. I think they have me too. I think it's helped me. I've had several people come to my aid, even if it's just to kick me in the pants and tell me to get up and, get going. And sometimes that's what we need. And sometimes we need a virtual hug or a kind word to get through things. But sometimes it just takes a good kick in the butt for me at least, to get back on the right track and, do the things I need to do, and realize that I may have it bad, but there's a lot of people have it worse. I'm trying, please don't take this wrong. And I've actually sort of tried to mention this to Pete, and I think maybe he doesn't understand. Maybe he's had it rough. I think he's doing well, all things considered. But I watched his video a couple of days ago where he was actually, walking on his porch with his prosthetic limbs, and I think that's amazing. I know what he's going through. He may not think that, and he hasn't said that. I don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Pete's doing that, but I've had to learn to rewalk too, and because my legs quit on me last year, and I couldn't feel them, and in some ways they might as well have been gone. But I've had to learn to rewalk, so I know kind of what he's going through, and I know how hard it is to make limbs go places they don't want to go or didn't ever go before, or at least they feel like that. And in his case, I can't imagine how much harder it is. Water therapy helped me so much because I was able to stand up and move my limbs and walk. And it proved to me that I was still able to stand upright and do things. And I think it's helped me, done a world of good for me. It helped my confidence. It helped my esteem. It just made me stronger, and I'm still at it. I'm still going to keep at it until I can walk as normal as possible. Recently, the doctor said he wasn't sure how much better the nerve damage would get that I've suffered from last year's event. But I'm still trying. I'm not going to give up. I may not regain all the feeling and nervous damage, may never repair itself, but I'm going to get as close, by God, as I can. So I'm not giving up on it. It's a little, hey, Cherie, we're getting ready to sign off, but I'm glad you came back. Hey, I got on my soapbox. I apologize. Anyway, this community has helped me push past that in many ways over the last months. And I'm so glad I got to know people. I've not met anyone face to face yet, and I can't wait till I can do that. I feel like that will be just an amazing event to me, to meet you folks, anyone in the chat. James Ryan wants to meet me in front of the partner statue in Magic Kingdom in front of the castle. And just the fact that he wants to do that with me is special. And I can't wait to get down there and do it. And James has been a great supporter. and a friend, and Josh and Brett and their kids, Lynn in Florida, Lynn Project. I'd love to meet. It's Corey's World and Josh and Jenna and Lord knows I'd love to meet Jeff and Angela. This our dream. So I have those dreams of maybe someday meeting those people. That I think maybe I'll feel like I am part of the community then. But it is an amazing community, and even if it's virtually, they've taken, for by and large, they have taken me in. So I really do appreciate that. Now that I was doing all this yakking, Tina said the community has helped her tremendously too, and I get that because they've made a big difference in my life. Just knowing there's other, for a long time I didn't know if there were people out there like me that loved Disney so much that I wanted to go there all the time. And people used to ask us all the time, my wife and I, why do you keep going to Disney? Why don't you ever go here or go there, or stay home and go back to Gatlinburg or something? Which don't get me wrong, I enjoy going up there, but I've been there all my life. I want to go somewhere else. But they didn't understand the magic of Disney, and most of the people here do. And they've had those same questions asked of them. So I feel more in place around this family group than this community than I did most of the people I ever knew. My own family, my mom and dad, when they were still alive, and especially my brother, who's 4 years younger than me, never really understood that. He and his wife came to Disney one time, and only thing he remembered about to tell me was that he thought it looked like stroller hell to him. So pretty sure they've never been back. Let me check on chat before I start signing off. I would really like to meet Corey. I think Corey is an excellent live streamer. I think he's a very good editor. And he does seem very down to earth, and his wife, Stephanie, and their 2 children are just beautiful. He's got 2 of the most adorable tow-headed kids, and Lucy and I don't really remember both of them's name now. Any other time I could. But I think and I would love to meet him. I would love to meet the whole family for that matter. Yeah, John, I'm still here, but I am going to get ready to get off. I've been saying this for 20 minutes that we're going to shut down because it's after 12:30 now, and people probably need to do other things and get busy. And I don't mean to tie up their whole days. And if I'm perfectly honest, I'm getting a little sore sitting here, so I need to probably get up, move around, or go stretch out on the couch or in the floor or something. That's one thing right now I'm having some problems with is my leg and my hips are setting doesn't do them a lot of good. Sometimes walking doesn't either, but setting can get to me after a while. It's right in the hips. We're not sure exactly what's causing that, but a lot of it's because my legs, since I have to walk funny and I don't walk normally, especially now that I've also got this really bad knee, that I think that's where a lot of it's coming from. If I get the knee fixed, then maybe I'm hoping it'll get better. I thought he didn't live that close to Disney, Cherie. I wasn't sure how far or anything, but I always got the impression that he did have to drive a little ways to get there. Well, a lot of the streamers don't live as close as it seems, although I think some of them have moved closer. I do think Josh now lives closer. I'm not sure about Jenna or mom and dad, which I'd love to meet their mom and dad too. I feel like they're probably about my age, which would be kind of fun. And most of the streamers out there, the really good ones, are younger than me. And maybe part of that's why they are good, because they grew up with the kind of technology they're using more than I did. I've tried to embrace the knowledge and try to learn computers and stuff since the early 90s, I guess, when I got my first one. But, up until that point, computers weren't really much of my life directly. Of course, they were affecting it indirectly. That's one of the reasons I believe you're going to get better than that doctor thinks you will. Pain means the nerves are still working. Yeah, it does, Tina, and I think that is too. I mean, for a long time, I felt some pain, but I couldn't feel my legs, especially my left leg. My right leg healed a little bit faster even before I got my surgery. It was stronger, so if I got out of bed, I could kind of hop around on one foot. I used a walker and crutches and a wheelchair at times. I didn't have one at home because our house is old and small in the doorways. I'm not sure a wheelchair even fit, but my left leg, you like to lay your hand on my left leg, and if you didn't jab me with a needle real hard or something, I'd probably never know you were there. And it's actually almost too sensitive now. It's super sensitive, which I believe is another sign that I've been told and read that could be another sign that the nerves are repairing themselves, and I'm having to relearn what touch is and what it feels like. So that is a part of why I do think I'm going to get better from that now. Whether I regain everything, whether my feet always feel this way, I mean, I know that folks my age, especially if they're diabetic or have diabetic symptoms, can have, a lot of nerve issues with their feet. But I never had any of that until this happened. So this has all been related to my spinal column or spinal cord damage. And as things come back, I'm really hoping that that's a sign. It may take another year. It may take me a while, but I'm going to be doing things before that. Things I've not been able to do for the last year. I just realized that last night. It's next month. It'll be a year since this happened. And I feel I don't say all that because I'm looking for pity or I don't know what else to call it, but I mean, I'm just telling it to be knowledgeable. It's what it is. It is what it is. And I do not want to spend my life in this chair. I want to do a lot more stuff online. I want to do some videos. I want to do some vlogs. I want to travel some on my bike with my buddy Phil. Brendan and I want to go some places. I was going to go to an aviation museum here this weekend or yesterday. And honestly, I don't think I can walk around in there long enough to enjoy it. I can motivate now better with my walker since I went to water therapy. It's much better, but I still can't stay up for a long period of time. And when I am done, I'm just usually worn out. But that's part of getting stronger. So maybe I need to be doing it more. Thank you, Kay. I do think it's going to get better. What the doctor said put me in the kind of a funk for a couple of days. I'll be honest, it was not what I wanted to hear. And he didn't say it was a definite thing. He just wasn't sure how much better I was going to get and didn't think I would get back to 100% of where I was. And I honestly I didn't think I would ever get back to 100%. I just didn't feel like that was going to happen. Maybe if I was younger, I don't know if it would have mattered, but I'm just not going to give it up. And I'm not, but still, when he said it, my spirit kind of took a nosedive, which is where I've been for the last couple of weeks. That's why I've not been chat as much for a lot of people. I'm trying to, but it's been painful a little bit more, and I just haven't been around. But I hate to always come and chat or in here and just tell everybody I'm in pain and I'm hurting. I mean, I'll tell them, and sometimes I guess I want them to know that I'm sorry I'm not here on time, but this is why. But I just feel like I don't deserve that. I don't want everybody's attention. There are people here who need prayers and thoughts and hope and friendship and whatever more than I do. I'm surviving. I'm not in a death situation. I'm in pain, and I've been in pain for so long that in some ways this is not new. It's different and it's worse probably, but it's just the way it is. And I'm not on pain meds, so that doesn't mean I wouldn't. If I could, I probably would. I was on pain meds for a long time, and once I weaned off of them, I don't think they'll want to put me back on them. But and I get that. I don't know what kind of damage long-term morphine use did, but I was on morphine for at least 10 or 12 years. Tina, is it you and I that are pretty close? Somebody and I are within a couple of years. James Ryan and I are born in the same year. I know that Josh and Jenna's parents are, or at least he is, retired from school system. I don't know what level he taught, but I know that's how they came to Florida. If you mean while I was down, yes, I did. When I was still not able to walk and stuff. In fact, I probably came into the community when I was still primarily bedridden. Or maybe I got into the community just before that, and then for a while that's how I was in, my laptop, laying in my bed or on my phone or a tablet. Now I'm on my computer again, and when I worked a lot on computers with spreadsheets and diagrams and writing papers and things for my work part of the time. But I had 2 monitors, so I liked that. So eventually got 2 for here. But one of the reasons I got 2 was because I wanted to start streaming. And so, that's, yeah, so I did, yes. If that's what you meant, I think that's what you're asking or saying. Okay, that's true too. We're not, but it's not. I would like to be at least a little bit. I never thought of myself as getting old till my body started saying, "Hey, whoa down there, boy." To think of myself as 64 still seems foreign in my head. That no, you're not. You can't be. You don't feel like that. But then I get up, my leg crumbles because it won't stand up. John 62. You were born in 59. Okay, so you're close. Okay, so they're a little bit older than me or us. I wasn't sure. I just knew they were close to our age. I know that I talk to Dad sometimes online when we're in chat about things he and I remember when we were younger that nobody else, a lot of people in chat don't think about or don't know about. And I'm kind of proud of being born at that time because I did see a lot of difference. I saw rural communities coming from still being not primitive, but without a lot of things now that we take for granted. I've told this before, but on neither side of my family, my grandparents didn't have running water like we do now, and they didn't have indoor plumbing, indoor toilets or anything. They both had outhouses, which I'm going to tell you something. I spent several very cold mornings in an outhouse at my grandmother's for Christmas morning, and when it was 20 degrees outside or something, and that is not the most fun thing you've ever done in your life. I'll tell you that. It makes you just, kind of put it off as long as possible. That's a good idea, Kay. That's what I need. I felt the same way. For a lot of times, I felt like my mind says you're still a young man, and my body says maybe not so much. But I think maybe I should do that too. I should think about the average, because actually the average would probably put me down in an age where I was still pretty active and gung ho. You don't have to say it, Tina. That's close enough. Men and women about ages are different. I just finally had to come to terms with mine. What was fun was when I was still working, a lot of people didn't believe, they would ask me my age, and most of them didn't believe I was the age I was because I was still real active and going, and I didn't act like I was 60. But so I always thought that was good. That meant I was doing something right. Of course, my beard wasn't quite as gray then either. thinking about putting some Grecian formula in it. What do you think? Or just leaving it gray and being proud of it. Sort of another way to let my freak flag fly, I guess. That's what we used to. And when I was in high school, if you're either, I won't say redneck, but you were natural born country type, short hair, crew cut, almost kind of family. And I actually grew up that way. By the time I got to high school, my hair was down over my shoulders, and it was, and I ran with part of the crowd that was that way. We never really considered ourselves true hippies because there were some of those in school then. So we were just kind of on the freak side, but we're not entirely. We had long hair and listened to the same music and not the country radio that our parents grew up listening to. So, we just fell right into that let your freak flag fly bunch. You know what, Kay? I've thought about that. I mean, it would probably take any color I wanted to. The problem is it would probably never come out. I had a friend of mine, actually the friend of mine who passed away, he had gray hair much earlier than I did, and it was pretty short, and his daughter was doing she was just about to get out of high school then, and she was taking some sort of a beautician class or what else you would call it. I know there's another name for it. And she asked him if she could dye his hair for practice for a school project. And he agreed. And then she dyed it I think she dyed it bright orange. And that could be because she was trying to make it a University of Tennessee orange color for a football team or whatever. But it came out much more orange than they ever expected. And they went to a beauty salon and asked about it and about if it would come out. It supposedly would wash out in a few weeks, which it didn't. It took a while. It did eventually grow out, but she said it's because of his gray hair. The gray hair just took the color so much better that it just took it in and locked it. And I think that's what would happen. In fact, I could make it some interesting group of colors, I suppose. I could make it like my dad's, leave this part white and, color this side dark. But my hair's, I'm just thankful I've got most of my hair left. I've not had a balding problem yet. But I keep it a lot shorter than I used to. But it's starting to get gray. It's still got some brown enough in it that looks brown, I guess. But there's a lot more gray in it than there used to be. Okay. I told you guys I'd let you go 40 minutes ago, and I haven't done it. So I need to start winding up. If anybody's got anything else going on or knows of something going on you want to remind folks of or let people know about, please do before we leave. Put it in the chat, and I'll post it here, highlight it, and I hope that everybody here has enjoyed their visit, and I hope you have a great rest of the Saturday and the rest of the weekend. We still got a day. I don't know. So there were a lot of people taking off this weekend. I heard them talk about travel, but it's not really a long weekend holiday. So I'm not sure. And it wasn't about Juneteenth. It was just travel. So I guess everybody's trying to kick it back in high gear. I hope we're not traveling too fun. Who's kicking? Anybody kicking? I'm not sure. Unless you mean kicking to get out. Nobody's asked to go, but I know the crowd's dwindling. But I know you guys have other things to do. And like I said, I need to probably get up and stretch and move around so that I can ease a little bit of the pain. So I have had fun. I always have fun with you guys. I appreciate and love the fact that you come in and talk to me and let me talk and listen to my goings on, whether it be nonsensical or scientific or just, wanderlust or travel or whatever. And means a lot to me. So I thank you for that. And like I said, I think it's probably time to shut the door in the barn and put the cows in. So we're going to do that. And I appreciate you here who's left, Tina and Kay at least. And you two have a great Saturday. And I hope anybody else that's listening does too. And I'll be back here again next week at 10 o'clock Eastern time. Don't know what kind of bear I'll be next week, but I'll be something. Sometimes that does help, Tina. And sometimes I'm bad about that. I'll get in the middle of something and forget that people don't know what the heck I'm talking about. So you guys have a wonderful time, a wonderful day. I hope everything's good to you, and have a good rest of the weekend. I hope the weather is fitting, and I hope you guys get out of the house some if you can. I want to. I'm going to try to do something if it's just right up to I don't know. Maybe I'll ride up to Gatlinburg with Brenda. I'll get her to take me up there just for the heck of it. Can always go to the knife store. And so long, and if the good Lord's willing and the creek don't rise, I'll be right back here again next Saturday. So see ya. Bye. I'm getting the camera here. Bye.